I happened to have the same outfit on last week, and I redrew this. We did not film this back to back, I promise.
I hope it's a clean shirt.
It's yeah, yeah. I might have showered once. Okay, so last week we talked about the different kinds of foot striking patterns that we see with runners. This is the one that we see quite a bit, but the one that we're trying to get people to is more of a forefoot strike, right? And that's where the front of your foot hits the ground first. What we need to think about, though, actually, let me back up. The reason that this is valuable is important. Most of the damage that happens, or most of the injuries that happen in the running cycle, happen in that phase of the run where you're trying to absorb the kinetic energy of that shock from that impact. So when your foot hits the ground, then if it hits the ground with the heel, that is basically like a direct shot into the heel, into the shin bone, your tibia, and even all the way up the leg. So we see stress fractures in the foot, in the heel bone, the calcaneus. We see them in the shin, and we actually will see them all the way up in the hip. That comes from a poor ability to absorb shock from impact. We don't like heel striking because it's basically a bone slamming into the ground every single time you take a step. So with this one right here, we want to get people over to the forefoot. The reason that this is valuable is because with heel striking, you don't use the ankle, or for the most part, even the foot, the muscles of the foot, to absorb that shock. With this, the foot comes down first, and then you actually use your calf muscles and the arches of the foot that we referenced, many, many months ago. They're controlling and absorbing that energy for when your forefoot hits. It's slowing down that heel coming to the ground. That process of slowing down that heel is how we absorb shock. So we have the kinetic energy of the foot striking the ground, and that's transmitted into mechanical energy where it's rotating around a joint and the muscles can absorb that. That's how we minimize the actual shock forces going through the leg. So this is really, really important, but the difficulty is that people will do toe running as opposed to forefoot striking. Forefoot striking simply is what hits the ground first. What we want is for the forefoot to hit first, but the whole foot must come to the ground. Usually, when you make this transition, if it goes too quickly and you're not paying attention to getting your heel down, then you end up getting, potentially some plantar fasciitis stuff or some Achilles tendonitis because you're just running and it's kind of like hopping for, miles and miles and miles for thousands of reps. You're keeping that Achilles really, really tight. And that's why this transition period is really where athletes that make this change are at the highest risk to get injured. So we want to make sure that we're teaching them to get that full foot down and offload that Achilles for a little bit to prevent getting some Achilles problems. But we need them to get over to this range so that they're able to actually get away from some of the injuries that result from the poor shock absorption that is present in the heel strike. So heel strike bad, forefoot strike good, but you must get that full foot to the ground. So if you're going to make that transition, you must get that full foot to the ground so that you can actually offload that. The other thing that we want to think about with this transition is if you notice that your Achilles is tight, you might just take that day off, and you want to make sure that you are spending time foam rolling the calves and stretching the calves out so that you can minimize this. Because if you have a tight Achilles or painful in the morning and you keep running on that, it will turn into some sort of tendinopathy that we want to avoid. So we'll start with that. We got one more that we'll do next week that'll kind of add in, how do you change the form a little bit. So I might have the same outfit on next time. It's likely.
I hope not.
Yeah, it's likely. So have a great week. We'll see you next Monday.